Hey, good morning. Welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. Continuing today in the book of Daniel in chapter 12. We're going to start it off. We've read it a couple times already. We're going to read it today just to refresh our minds. Let's see. There we go. Sorry. And, all right. So I'm trying to make everything ready to go. It is ready to go, but there's a lot of clicking. All right, and at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince which standeth for the children of thy people. And there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation even to that same time. And at that time thy people shall be delivered, every one that shall be found written in the book. And many of them that sleep in the dust. I'm sorry, I need one second. That coffee was too hot. All right. That's not a complaint, I just meant can't drink it just yet. Okay. Verse 2. And many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. And they that be wise shall shine as the brightness of the firmament, and they that turn many to righteousness as the stars forever and ever. But thou, O Daniel, shut up thy words and seal the book, even to the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. Then I, Daniel, looked, and behold, there stood other two, the one on this side of the bank of the river, and the other on that side of the bank of the river. And one said to the man clothed in linen, which was upon the waters of the river, How long shall it be to the end of these wonders? I heard the man clothed in linen, which was upon the waters of the river, when he held up his right hand and his left hand unto heaven, and swear by him that liveth forever, that it shall be for a time, times, and a half. And when he shall have accomplished to scatter the power of the holy people, all these things shall be finished. And I heard, but I understood not. Then said I, O my Lord, what shall be the end of these things? And he said, Go thy way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed till the time of the end. Many shall be purified and made white and tried. But the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand. But the wise shall understand. And from the time that the daily sacrifice shall be taken away, and the abomination that maketh desolate set up, there shall be 1,290 days. Blessed is he that waiteth and cometh to the 1,330 days. But go thou thy way till the end be, for thou shalt rest and stand in thy lot at the end of the days. I'm just going to whatever stiff. All right. Very interesting, right? The ending of Daniel. I was thinking it was interesting that at the beginning of this section, he talks about how he understands. I understood the vision and that. But at the end of this, he's like, I did not understand. And I think I could say that about everything in the scriptures. I understand, I don't understand. Because there's certainly a measure of understanding and a measure of I don't want to use the word mystery, because mystery, sometimes people think of mystery, you could call it mystery, but it's more like murk. I just don't understand. Not that it's a mystery that God has hidden per se, like it talks about the Christ and the church, and it being that's called a mystery. But it's not that it's like never been heard before. It's a mysterious union because it's like it's not apparent. It's not like a physical union. You know what I mean? It's a mysterious union. So I don't mean like that. I mean in the sense that like it's still unknown. And Daniel certainly didn't understand the whole of his vision. Now, at the end, the wise should understand. But so far, no one wise has stepped forward to understand, as far as I can tell. I've heard a lot of people relying on Daniel, using all these, like, the lining up things with events in history or stars in the sky. There's like that 2017 thing. I made a video about it on my other channel. I think I might have ported it over here in single studies. It's whatever. To me, it was no, like, great leap to say, like, no, this is not it. But, like, oh, well, it heralds the end. Well, maybe. But those things are such obscure signs. The movements of the stars. There's always things going on in the stars. And they are for signs and for seasons. But I don't know if it's exactly what people... The problem is the interpretation of. Do they really understand? Just because the stars, something's happening, that's not much of anything. I mean, it's all in the interpretations. Oh, I had a dream, I had a dream. But do you understand the dream? And so there's a lot of problems understanding this dream. At that time shall Michael stand up. Who is Michael? Michael the archangel. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels, and prevailed not. And they were cast out. Now, some people put that event as a historical past, perhaps at Christ's ascension, right? It does, in that chapter, it occurs at a place where it feels kind of like, yeah, it's like Christ descends into heaven. Her child was caught up unto God and his throne. And then I think that, right, that sequentially, I'm sorry if I didn't get that wrong. I hate when I second guess myself and then I gotta go do this. I just don't want to have to run through the whole song in my head, because that's the way my understanding works. It's like, it's a big passage to me in my mind, and I know the whole thing, but it's like pulling a specific verse out. It's more like I'll remember a specific part. I just want to remember a macro point about it. So here we go. Bible collection. There we go. Let's see. So in chapter 12, which will be an appropriate chapter because this is about Michael. Michael the archangel. I believe Michael and Gabriel are the only named angels other than Satan, right? In the biblical canon. Now, in the Apocrypha and stuff, there's all kinds of other angels. And among the pseudepigraphal or the other literature, the other writings, the Jewish mysteries and stuff, there's different angels named. But I believe Michael and Gabriel were the only two named in the Bible. And so that makes them very significant. And then, of course, people say, well, Lucifer. Yeah, but that wouldn't have been... Like, Michael is a Hebrew name. Lucifer is a Latin name. I'm just being real here. If you want to take that passage for the name of Satan, then his name was Halel ben Shakar, bright star, son of the dawn, would be the name that was given to him in the prophecy there. And that, of course, applied to the king of Babylon. But the king of Babylon is no more the morning star than Lucifer is. It's an ironic title, obviously. Some people think God never uses irony or sarcasm. It's like, well, then you're going to have a hard time with the Bible, I tell you. How art thou fallen from heaven, bright star? Then, even though Christ is, I am the bright and morning star. I'm the brightest star in the sky. And so Michael, some people, like the Jehovah's Witnesses, I believe they are the ones, if I'm mistaken, and pardon me, it's one of the other sects that are just kind of at the edges of Christianity. And they think that Christ is Michael the Archangel. Or is that another... I'm not a specialist in, all kinds of different ways people... especially those... honestly, the Mormons and the Jehovah's Witnesses... The Mormons... the Jehovah's Witnesses... for him... No, I'm sorry, Jehovah's Witnesses. Christ isn't Michael the Archangel, is he? No. He is Jehovah, right? Right. Jehovah. There's no Savior besides Jehovah. I apologize. They're the ones who say... They're the ones who confuse him. It's the Mormons who think he's Michael the Archangel, correct? Or something like that? I forget. I forget who puts him that way, but that's not... Christians don't believe that because he is not quite the same. But he is the archangel that stands for the children of thy people. He's the archangel of the people of Israel. And what, and, you know, and what does that mean? I mean, what does it mean? When we hear that, when the other angel, um, which says, I was wrestling with the prince of Persia, that you could, you know, and he said, I was withstanding him. And another time I strengthened him. So Michael is in some way for God, for Israel. So to me, that is also something that's like, I can't say a whole lot about, because I'm not quite understand, what does he do? Does in the, like, strengthen leaders? Or, but sometimes, no, obviously, right? When the leaders are wicked and turn from God. But also, when the leaders are wicked, God still sends angels to influence them in some way. But the point is, like, if that's so, then, the Lord uses these things to push things around in the world. At least that's what it would seem from Daniel, what it seems to say, if we understand it. If we understand it. What that means. Maybe Michael is symbolic of a great prince that shall rise. I don't want to be, obviously there's Michael in the book of Revelation, very clearly an angelic leader of an angelic army. And possibly, with the chain later on, binding the dragon and throw him in the bottomless pit. Anyways, so I always feel a little bit sketchy about angels, because they appear prominently, and I'm not sure. I mean, I see, and the things they do are kind of disturbing if you think about it. Disturbing to, like, whatever I think, like, well, it makes sense on a certain level. It's disturbing to this comfortable view that God is in control, like with this sort of absolutist, like, he's just fine. He's so, and I believe he is, of course. Well, whatever. I don't know what I believe, really. What do I know about God except what he reveals to me? I know he's quite powerful, but but he also has these other powers moving on the world and influencing it, and strengthening things, I guess assuring things go the way they're supposed to go. He shall give his angels charge over thee. I've often said, whatever, a lot of close calls, but then you think, like, well, but why does everything go so badly so often? Why are there evil angels? Well, because of the same reason I talk about it all the time, is that despite God knowing how it's going to turn out and determining how it's going to turn out, he wants us within this not to feel at all, from our point of view, and from the standpoint of his judgment, as far as we have enough agency to be guilty of everything. It's like God is not interfering us with that much. It's often when we get into positions of great wickedness and power, that's like God feels like, I owe you nothing. You owe me a lot, and you're not serving. And so God will do what he wills with the wealthy, the powerful, and he will use them and destroy them and raise them up and bring them down. It's like, I never sought to be one of them, I tell you that. Because it's like, well, because in a sense, you see what the burden is. The judgment begins at the house of God. If you really want to be great, rise in the house of God and see where you get there. As far as, like, well, when I talk about rising in the house of God, I don't mean in your local church. It's like, because that's kind of petty politics. If you want to be promoted in the church, you go to the Lord. That's where I've gotten all my promotions from him. I haven't gotten any ministry from any other man. People say, oh, you're Arnold Murray. It's like, look at, well, I suppose, hey, yeah. Well, but I don't even bother. I don't even talk about, I talk about him a little bit, but I have no concerted effort against that guy. He's dead. That's it. His chances to repent are over. And whatever, his son still preaches the same things. I think there are more important things to move on to right now, that's all. Right? There shall be a time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation, even to the same time. I guess with that first issue, the only thing I want to add is just this idea that angels are participatory the way we are participatory in some ways. You know what I mean? Like that we have this real experience, and their experience is real. They're not automatons any more than we are. You know, it's the determinate counsel and foreknowledge of God that's bringing forth is an exceedingly complicated system that not only involves determination, but also relationship. Meaning, God determined things, but part of his determination also is part of the relationship he's going to have with you. It's like, you know, and it's funny, I have a determinate counsel and foreknowledge about my family too. You know, it's like when I raised my children, I thought about what happened to me growing up and the way I turned out in my relationship with my parents. And I realized, you know, my parents, the way my life turns out, blaming your parents for the way your life turns out is nonsense. It's not my parents' responsibility how my life turns out. That's my responsibility. The only thing your parents really have control over is the kind of relationship that is formed with you. You know, like they can determine that. They can form that. Not absolutely, but they have a great deal of say over that. A parent does. And that's many magnitudes, obviously infinite magnitudes greater with the Lord. He is able to, you know, maneuver those relationships. And so when I think of angels and that, it's a complication it's a relationship. Anyone who thinks they understand or starts giving you charts and stuff, I don't really think they understand. It's a false understanding that's sort of meant to give you kind of a comfort of like knowledge. It's like, I take not my comfort from knowledge, but from faith and hope in the truth. You know, not from knowledge of, you know, looking into the affairs of angels and such things. Okay, there's going to be a time of trouble such as never was from the time since there was a nation, even to that time. I don't know if they mean specifically the nation is from the beginning of the nation, meant a nation, Israel, because that's the nation he would be speaking of. Daniel would be most concerned about, you know, Israel. What's going to happen to Israel in the promises which God made to Israel? How, you know, what is that? How is this all going to work itself out? God, you said Abraham and this and all these things. You know, all that's in here. When I read it, I just hear that whole subtext of the whole narrative of the Bible, the book of Revelation, which he doesn't even see yet. You know what I mean? All the prophecies uttered from the apostles concerning the end times, and the you know, and the ones before Daniel, and yet there would be some after. Right? And there's all this history that happened to Israel, and even since then, even more. And what about all these things? You know, the Jews have had many Holocausts. You know, that's not to minimize the most recent awful one. That's only to say it's like their persecution goes way back. They had a lot of trouble. It's within, you know, the end times are often called the time of Jacob's trouble. It's also going to be trouble for Israel. I mean, there is Israel to have trouble. There's a nation there. And there could be a lot. That's one of the things people thought, well, that's a sign of the end, you know. In 1914 or 1948 or 1967 or 19 whatever. And then they start trying to count. You could count a long time, who knows. The way it's written out, because you know why? As I've always argued, it's not gapless. And the gaps are what get you. The Lord gives you periods of prophecy. It gives you a period. This is from this to that. You know, there's a parenthesis. Here you go. Here's a little thing. Here you go. Here's a little block. It gives you these blocks. And people will try to line them up. But it doesn't tell you, I didn't give you all the pieces. You know, if you don't have all the pieces, you can't make the timeline. And if you don't know and if we don't have we don't even really know exactly. And I've looked at all these. It's like there's no clear chronology for the end times. It's very murky. I mean, there's a big chronology, I think, yes. But I mean, but as far as like if you were to try to take everything in Revelation and everything in Daniel and everything in the other prophets that I could draw in a lot, right? And you take all that stuff, say, okay, put it into chronological order. In where? In heaven or on earth? You know, it's like, what chronology? Are they even on the same timeline? But that, of course, speaks of the greatest trouble of all. There is going to be the end trouble, the final thing. They call it the Great Tribulation, the end times. You know, the term end of days has been used here, but it doesn't always mean the end of the world. It often means just the end of that big problem, the end of the next big problem. When will this all be over? Because have you ever go, like with the pandemic, right? Well, when will this all be over? When will the end be? When can we, move on? And that's kind of an idea of the end. But there is, and the scripture is very clear, there is an ultimate end. There's an ultimate end. Not just a temporal end that just leads to something else that's the same. An end that leads to something completely different. An end that leads to this. Many of thy people shall be delivered, everyone that shall be found written in the book, many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake. Some to everlasting life, and to some to shame and everlasting contempt. At that time thy people shall be delivered, everyone that is found written in the book. That specifies. It's like in the book of Revelation, of course, chapter 20, it talks about the great white throne and the books are opened. And there's another book, the book of life. And whosoever was not found written in the book of life was cast in the lake of fire. Because you had to be written in that book. Other books are very interesting. They have all kinds of interesting things about things you did and all that. I can tell you that virtually every person, their life story is going to need some sort of reconciliation for the things they did wrong. You will have done things wrongly, badly enough that it requires payment. And none of us is able to pay, but Christ will pay. And also there was in the past, you look at Job, he offered the sacrifices that pleased God. Not that those things ever take away sin. But I always figure that the way I look at, they talk about Old Testament saints, I always figure that it's like, well, at the judgment, they are, they receive the mercy of Christ because they were offering those sacrifices anticipating the better sacrifice. And if it was done correctly, it would be no different than my faith as exercised in the world. Meaning, I practice my faith ultimately by trying to do the right thing and not by the blood offerings I give God, right? So I don't give any blood offerings. I just do the right thing instead and just trust in the one blood offering of Christ as covering the things I have done wrong. And of course it's our faith in Christ that gets our names entered in particular into the book of life. All you have to do is have been alive once to be entered into one of the other books, which I presume to contain the rolls of all who have ever lived. Because that's the idea, is what's in those books? Well, everything about everyone who ever was. Is it a literal book? No, it's not a literal book. No, I don't think so. It's just a symbol of a book. It's like, no, meaning that no one is forgotten. It's all written down. That's why he says, I wrote it down in a book, all right? It's just so we would understand, book, that's permanent. It's like I etched it in stone. I carved it upon the palm of my hand, he said. That's what makes me trust verse 2. It's like he said, I carved your name in the palm of my hand. Many that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake. All? No, it says many here. Because there is a many and then there is an all, right? Well, because I would say it's like, because there are two resurrections. And that's not exactly revealed here, but the way this is said, it almost makes me think of the first resurrection and the second resurrection. Because in the first resurrection, not all shall rise. Also, in the spiritual resurrection, not all wake up. And if you know what I'm talking about like Matthew chapter 5. Let me get a sip of water. I'm really pushing it there. But in the book of Matthew chapter 5, where it talks about the resurrections there. Oh man, I forgot to switch back to the Daniel, but that's okay. We were only on that second verse. But now I'm going to go take you over to, sorry, I was looking at my other screen and I didn't realize it was that way. Oh well. But now I want to bring you over to that because I think it's significant, because it's an important part of this idea of the resurrection. There are two resurrections. Revelation 20 says, I saw an angel come down from heaven having the key of the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand. And he laid hold on the dragon, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, and he bound him 1,000 years, right? And I saw I should just read from that. I can't look for scriptures and quote them from memory at the same time, Paul. I wasn't trying to show off. I just thought maybe I could do it, but that's not working for me. Let me just go to Matthew first. Maybe if we want to go over to that in Revelation 20, we can think about that separately than while you're trying to do something at the same time. Not Matthew 5. Gosh, I'm glad I actually came. It's John 5. Okay. Here's the one. There's a spiritual resurrection that Christ talks about. He says, verily, verily, I say unto you, the hour is coming, and now is, when the dead shall hear the voice of the Son of God, and they that hear shall live. And it's this thing where, like, if you respond, you receive life. And it's talking about faith, and he's talking about faith. Those that hear him, his words, and believe in him can receive life. For as the Father hath life in himself, so hath he given the Son to have life in himself. And he hath given him authority to execute judgment also. Or is it? Oh, yeah. And so, I went to the second one, but... Oh, yeah. Okay. So the earlier one, though... Wait. They that hear shall live. Okay, yeah. It's just the next verse. I was looking back something, but it's 28. Marvel not at this, for the hour is coming, in the which all that are in the graves shall hear his voice. It's very explicit. All that are in the graves. Not just the dead, like the dead. The spiritually dead are going to hear his voice, and they that hear shall live. See, some shall hear. Some shall live. Some that sleep shall wake up. You know, there's a some that wake up. And then there's an all that wake up. All that are in the graves. And in the book of Revelation, and the sea, and hell, they all give it up. All that are in the graves shall hear his voice. I love that. And shall come forth, they that have done good unto the resurrection of life, and they that have done evil to the resurrection of damnation. So there's a spiritual resurrection of which there's only one. You either rise from the dead, the deadness of you were dead in trespass and sins. The dead meaning that you got to realize you are condemned. You're going to die. And not only that, it's worse than that. You're guilty. You entered into God's world and you didn't behave yourself very well. You didn't do right. You squandered your opportunity. Well, I don't want that to be the case. Many that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. I say, to me, the life and death dynamic is a perfect sort of opposition. Life and death. Some people confuse this because it talks about shame and contempt. Shame and contempt. Shame is a subjective thing I feel, but others can also project upon me, like I shame you. But contempt also is something that one can feel contempt or contemptible, but contempt also originates from those who observe the contempted. You know, and I can have contempt for someone else. And so I think there's some sort of, when it talks about eternal torment versus the second death, I take the second death quite literally. It is unconsciousness, blackness, just like before you were born. You're wiped out. They say, well, what about all that torment? There's judgment and there's plenty of torment in this life. And when it's over, you're subject to eternal, there is a sort of eternal torment, but it is a spiritual thing, the way I believe it, that it has to do with what is extracted, the reason, there's a good reason why everything happened in this world, even the wicked, and torment represents the idea of extracting something good from something evil. The information, meaning someone has put to torment for what reason? Well, they know, not that I do think it is, I don't think we should practice this because it is wrong. I don't believe in literal torment. That's why. But he uses our word basanismos in the New Testament. It's not given here. I don't think Daniel also, because like I said, shame and contempt is the grave. The grave is the place of corruption. There's no honor in the grave, as the scriptures say. You're not, the other day I heard Tucker Carlson, in the end, all graves go unvisited, In the end, all graves go unvisited. Except for the Lord. He visits every single one and brings them back for judgment and for reward. I do think the reward of the lake of fire, when you're taking all the scriptures on balance, is death. And the torment is, like I said, there is certainly torment and death, but the idea that God would explicitly keep someone alive in a state of torment eternally, if you really can believe and serve a God like that, I'm not sure the actual God likes that. Like I say, I almost feel it's like a litmus test. You really believe that? You believe something so awful, and then you would act. I guess to me, it's like maybe the beauty of Christ's sacrifice is so great that they feel like, okay, I have to accept this part too. And it's like if it could be explained to me, I suppose I could accept it, but I don't accept it. And I'm not even going out of my way to explain it in a scriptural way. I have other works on that. I won't need to make a big deal about it now. But to me, I just do think it says something about us. So, well, I don't like it either. Well, yeah, I know you don't, but you still, the apologetics for it isn't really good. I understand there's a good scriptural case to be made, sure. But like I said, I could throw the whole thing out. You guys toss out the second death with just a wave of the hand and say, that's spiritual. It's like, what? Death is just spiritual, meaning you don't actually die? Well, that's interesting. Then why does he even bother call it life? Why doesn't he call it pleasure? Pleasure and pain. You know what I mean? Why does he juxtapose life and death? Why doesn't he juxtapose pleasure and pain? And why do Christians constantly portray heaven as some pleasure palace full of pastries? And why are we so fat? Pleasure and pain? No, it's not pleasure and pain. It's life and death. That's what I think. So, but anyways, fortunately, the belief in that doctrine, I don't think is a real litmus test. I feel like it's a bit of it's like you received mercy. And you think that the opposite of mercy is, I think the Lord there's two kinds of mercies, There's the kind mercy and the cruel mercy. And I believe God is merciful, but cruel. But he's not sadistic. That's the difference. That's why I can't believe in that doctrine, because it's sadistic for him to have to extract. So, because you understand, because they'll try to say well, God has no choice. He has to torture them forever. They've sinned against an infinite God, and he would have had to made that up. That would have to be his idea. He'd have to say so. He doesn't say so in the Bible. That's just something Protestants say. That's something people say. It's something God said. That it requires infinite punishment. They're just making an apologetic for the doctrine they've already presumed to be true. It's like, well, wow, how can we justify this? That's not a good justification. That's horrible. So like I said, there's there's something wrong on that front. I don't know what it is. And it kind of reveals to me in a sense, it's like, is this just brand loyalty? You know, it's just you, because a lot of people say, well, you wouldn't even be a Christian if you weren't born a Christian. That's not true for me, because I almost became an unchristian, except God interfered in my life. So I don't buy that entirely, but I know a lot of people, maybe that's true. They're Christians, and it's just their brand. It's, oh, we believe in eternal torment. I'm kind of embarrassed about it, but because you won't never hear hardly anybody stand up for it, not in front of a mixed crowd. I wouldn't even need to prepare for that debate if it wasn't a scriptural one. You know what I mean? If it was just a philosophical one, I could walk in off the street to that debate and murder anybody who teaches eternal torment. I mean, as far as in the debate, absolutely put them under the. There's no philosophical argument that's going to work. You're going to get booed off the stage. Scripturally, though, there's a good case. It hinges on death is just a spiritual experience. I'm like, well, torment's just a spiritual experience. How about that? How about that? Why is that? Why is it one and not the other? That's the question I'm going to ask someday when I get my chance. Not with God, but with men. Then they that be wise, shall shine as the brightness of the firmament. And they that turn many to righteousness as the stars forever and ever. You know, God has promised, this is even, not really, you know, he that overcometh will I grant to sit with me in my throne. Yeah, I can see how Daniel would hear this and not understand. What? Shine is the brightness of the firmament? The brightness of the sky? I assume that's what he means. And they that turn many to righteousness as the stars? As the stars? They that turn many to righteousness, those are the witnesses which bear witness in the end times against Antichrist and speak, preach the gospel, continue to preach the gospel in the face of an impostor. But thou, Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book, even to the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. So, you know, in some ways, this could still be true for us. It could be not for us to understand. Is it the time of the end? Well, you know, as far as the degree of my understanding, I don't feel like, you know, I feel like my understanding is still stuck at Revelation. Like, I understand this in light of the book of Revelation, and that's how much my understanding is more, let's say, advanced than Daniel's, meaning Daniel just didn't have, it wasn't explained. He didn't have that information from Revelation and the Gospels of the Messiah and all that stuff to reference and to think about it and to take comfort in, as far as a place of drawing from understanding. And he never would. He was going to die. Though, you know, he's a man very blessed, given visions and things. And like I said, you know, people act like, oh, the Bible's full of all these Not really. If you think about the lives of the people in the Bible, they are punctuated with these remarkable events. It's not frequent. So I try, in my life, I expect possibly God will speak to me one more time. You know what I mean? Like, probably, while I'm still alive. You know, that'll probably be the most important time. You know, I trust that because I'm too ignorant. And unless, like, I'm just supposed to keep going along the way I am, which I will do, which is fine, because I will take instruction as they're given and guidance as he gives it and go along the way he's led me so far. But if there was anything, but I always kind of felt like, yeah, because of the dream I had once, I always thought, like, he'll show me someday. But I don't, you know, I don't sit around every day hoping for a deeper revelation of like God, I need you to talk to me right now, because I have so many things in front of me that I know I need to do. All I pray about is for the strength to do it, because like I don't have anything like, Lord, what should I do? Lord, what should I do first? Would be the only question I have. Lord, which one should I do first? That's all. I know what to do. That's a comforting thing, though, to feel like at least you know what you got to do. To be aimless would be the worst thing in the world. I'd rather be overloaded with the Lord. There's no burden of the Lord. I mean, it's like, I'd rather be overloaded with his tasks than any, because like his tasks are lighter, genuinely. So then he goes back and he's back at that river again, right? That he saw earlier. How far back was that? What, chapter 10? Isn't that where there was a vision on the river? And 11 was kind of a shift, and yeah, also in the first year of Darius the Mede. But I think what he's saying, like, you know what it is? Is like these visions took place at different times. Yeah, totally different times. But they were connected. And I think maybe that's what he was saying he understood. That these two visions were connected somehow. I'm just saying. Because he saw this man, the Hierophant, as it was called, the sort of holy guard or whatever. His body was like the beryl, and his face is the appearance of lightning, and his eyes are the lamp of fire, right? He was left alone, and he saw the great vision. Where? He was on his knees, man beloved. I'm going to show you. Wait, that was in the river? Was the river even earlier? He was on the ground. They were talking, right? Then they talk about the kings of Greece. Was that 9? Oh, wait, maybe it was 9. But the point, actually, I don't need to. It doesn't really matter where it was, except for the fact that the visions are separated, right? But he has a vision on the river more than once, I believe, right? Yeah. You know what I'll do? I can find it. It's real easy. You just go here and I'll be like, okay, find. And then I'll just select no books. Clear that. Oh, you can't see that part. But I'm just selecting the book of Daniel as the search range. And then I'll just search the word river. Oh. And it was chapter 8. And I say, 428. No, actually it was besides the river Hiddekel. Now, you remember, that's one of the rivers from... That was chapter 10. Okay, I went too far. It was 10:4. Okay, for sure. I already read that, but the guy with the Hierophant. Okay, that was the river passage, too. For a second, I thought that wasn't on the river. I just didn't read the part about the river. Okay, yeah. So he was staying on the river. And this also makes me think of, remember, the angel on the river in chapter 10, a book of Revelation, with his, 1 foot upon the sea, 1 foot upon the earth. Very similar. He was by the river Hiddekel. Hiddekel is one of the rivers which is mentioned in Genesis as the Garden of Eden. Though honestly, I don't know if the Garden of Eden was there or if that name was transported from an earlier time. Just like we have New York and other things that are named after, there's cities not always new either. Sometimes it's just it gets the same. There's Cambridge, Massachusetts, which is named after Cambridge, England. So this is Hiddekel, Iraq, and maybe not Hiddekel, Eden. So it's not necessarily. Meaning when you feel your origin is from these names of these 4 rivers and you carry those down for generations, you come to the new region, then they say, well, this is the Hiddekel, this is the Tigris, this is the Euphrates, whatever. That's just a theory. Or I could say a hypothesis. Well, it's a theory of what I'm looking at it, right? It's a theory in the sense of like people do that. That is something people do. They go into new places and they name the new places after the old places. It would be a hypothesis that that's how the river Hiddekel in Iraq got its name, or in Persia. That might be in Iran, actually. I don't know. I know those rivers run through that region. Okay. And when he shall stand up, his kingdom shall be... we go back. So they're on the river again. So this is important. I think this river symbolizes the river of life in the end time. That is seen in the book of Revelation in chapter 22. I saw a pure river of water of life, clear as crystal, proceeding out of the throne of God. It symbolizes it. Like Satan will cast out of his mouth waters of a flood. I'm trying to think of, sometimes there's a banks of the river thing, the river. But when I think about, like, when it talks about passages that talk about, like, satanic figures, let's call it. I don't want to say Satan. Like one of my favorite songs that I did from long ago was Ezekiel chapter 31, right? Take up a lamb. Like, Son of man, speaking to Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and to his multitude. It's interesting. It's a passage talking to Pharaoh, comparing him to perhaps the Assyrian, but we'll just say that for the sake of argument because that's what it says in the King James. Comparing him to the Assyrian. And one of the things that he does, and the Assyrian, of course, to me is Satan in this case, and so is the Pharaoh. They're both satanic figures. They are the enemies of God's people, and that's why they become satanic figures and how they behave. So, Pharaoh, king of Egypt, right? He is likened to the Assyrian, and what was the Assyrian likened to? A cedar in Lebanon with fair branches, and with a shadowing bough. And why does he grow so big? Why does he grow so tall? Because his root was by great waters, by the river. You know what I mean? His roots were by the waters and fed of the waters of life. And it's symbolic of the life that God gives us. God gives us life. We have to do something with it. Well, we have the opportunity to do something with it. He doesn't give us an instruction. Well, some people say he gives us an instruction booklet, but it's not like you come out of the womb necessarily. Every single person gets handed a little manual. That doesn't happen. But you do have a little tiny manual, and it's called your conscience. And that's developed through your own experience. And you can decide to take on life with a with a resentful and, wrathful and, like Cain, basically, that when things don't go your way, you blame God and blame your brother and blame everybody else like a narcissist does. Or you can take the path of Abel and do the right thing and make your peace with God. We all have a little bit of light. We have a light that lightens every man that comes into the world. We all have a little bit of the knowledge and of the light of God in us because each of us are made in his image. We each drink of the river that flows from the throne. We don't consider we're trespass. We are in the king's land. It's like, well, nobody said I had to be here. It is a great honor for you to be here. Okay, and you won't be here very long, trust me. But while you're here, I'll tell you what, it's a very wise thing to avail yourself of the opportunity at drinking of this river to figure out how you might get to drink of it so you never thirst again. And that's what Jesus said, that if you put your faith in me, you'll have a well of water and you welling up into everlasting life so you will never go thirsty again. So when we see this river image, it's important because it's standing over the life that flows from God. At least that's how I'm seeing it right now. He raises up his hands to heaven. He's straddling that river. Right? How long shall it be to the end of the... When is this river going to keep flowing like this? Because there's a new flow coming. You know what I mean? Life is going to change. The waters are going to be diverted. The river's course is going to change. Some people are going to be cut off from the waters. Some people are going to be never thirsty again. I think that's that symbolism of the angel standing on the riverbank. I don't know about when he's on the sea. It's a little different. I think it's a different vision, obviously, but it is always heralding some big deal. Because there should be time no longer, and that the seventh angel should sound. It's the end of everything. And so they're saying, when's the end of this? Well, that's the dude who shows you when the end is. The angel with the little book in his hand. Because it says right now. But he says, oh wait, I went too far. And then he says to the man, which was upon the river, how long shall be the end of the... And I heard the man clothed in linen, which was upon the waters of the river, when he held up his right hand and his left hand to heaven, and swear by him that liveth forever and ever, that it shall be for a time, times, and an half. And when he shall have accomplished to scatter the power of the holy people, all these things shall be finished. I wonder what that scatter the power of the holy people means before I commit to an interpretation. Not that I ever commit to an interpretation, but before I commit my lips to an interpretation, I'm trying to be a little more careful, all right? Oh, wrong one. Okay. Here we go. All right, and I heard a man go close. Okay, verse 27. There we go. He was on the water when he held up his right hand, his left hand in heaven, swear by him to live forever. From time to time, I want to look at another translation. Actually, I don't want to do this in the Hebrew way. Let's just see what the NIV says. I want to see if it says something just crazy different. You know, I mean, that's why I went to the NIV. And then I'll start picking apart other translations. But if the NIV sounds like the King James, then I'm just going to stop there, right? That's kind of like a nice rule of thumb. It's like if the NIV agrees with the King James, you're probably on good territory. No further research required. I'm kidding a little bit on that. Okay, when the power of the holy people has been finally broken, all these things will be completed. Okay, that makes sense. They agree, so I'm not going to bother, because it sounds pretty much like the same thing to me. I'm not going to belabor that point. I'm going to commit to it, because I was just thinking of scatter in the terms of broken, but I thought that might mean something different. So now, wait, I do want to look at that anyways in Hebrew, because even though they are better scholars than me, if there are other options, I still like to know about them, because better scholars may make bad interpretations. Meaning they may have a choice between a second or third definition of a word, but may choose one that makes sense to them as a scholar, but doesn't make sense scripturally in terms of interpretation. Scatter. Nefati. To sunder. Or split. Or to shatter. To break. Yeah, this is pretty, oh, I'm sorry, wrong one. Here we go, there you go. It's kind of interesting. On the right-hand side, in the Englishman's Concordance, I find it interesting because it's like, what is wrong with this thing? I'm sorry, I'm going to make it narrower. There we go. You know, it's like, interesting. Yeah, see, this is what I'm talking about, though. It is a little, it means to shatter, but also the whole earth was populated in Genesis 9, or the whole earth was overspread, spread out. See, shatter, when you shatter a glass, the glass goes, psh, right? And scatter, like in the King James, psh. And so in Genesis 9:19, when it says, and by them was the whole earth overspread, now the word populated is probably a very good English, the New American Standard. I don't like that. Well, because you're really changing the word there. I mean, I know it means the same thing. That is what you call an interpretation. It's a correct interpretation. It's not like a spiritual interpretation, because it means the same thing. It means the exact same thing when they say, by them the whole earth was populated, by them the whole earth was overspread, or by them the whole earth was scattered, shattered, and spread. You spread out. And it's correct, but it's not actually what the Hebrew is saying. You notice how the King James actually tells you a little bit more about what the Hebrew word means. It means to scatter, in that sense. So as people scatter out over this landscape, they mean spread out. But we say populated. Not exactly the same thing. It's a more simple word. Here it's used to mean smash and break, scattering. I will have them broken. But you see, they translated broken other places. So you have the same word being translated in your Bible as broken and populated. See, I dislike that. I like when the words I like if we could choose one word for a Hebrew word. Sometimes that just is impossible, because because of the idiomatic uses, it just becomes impossible, because they're just used so strangely that we have to change, because while we can understand the idea of, by them, the earth was scattered with people. Let's just say populated, because that's the way we say that. I get it. But actually people would, I don't know, dispersed, to be beaten in sunder, okay? So a wide variety of uses for that word. So I'm going to say the negative connotation here is probably right, and probably the most negative connotation because there would be two negative connotations. One negative connotation would be scattered, as in like spread out their population, like the way the Jews were dispersed in the diaspora, right? They were spread out among the nations and sent out into different countries. Well, that would be one form of scattered. That would be the taking this a little more on the light side of it, and it would be within the realm, I think, of the Hebrew to be able to interpret it that way. Like instead of smashing the power of the holy people, they sort of diminish it, which is, I think it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other anyways, because it means we already know he will overcome the saints. It's just being repeated here again. Hey, some among them shall fall to try them, to make them white. Not fall as in, when we talked about that. When they fall, they should be hoping with a little hope. We are, like it says, we are cast down but not destroyed. So whatever, we expect, I do expect to have victories, small victories. We have to do exploits. We're going to do deeds. But we're ultimately going to have to, the world's going to have its way with us, as much as they did with Christ. A servant is not greater than his master. It doesn't mean there won't be survivors. But some of us will be caught up in the murderous rampage that's going to be at the end of the world. It's just all right. It's all right. Because we're going to be raised. You have to remember, he will not forget your name. Your name is written in his book, both of them. And he said, I heard, but I understood not. My Lord, what shall the end of these things? What's going to be the end? And he said, go your way. So he didn't understand. How does this quite go? Times and times and times and a half. 3.5 years. I was going to mention that, when I look at that, he swears it's going to be times and a half. I'm not particularly satisfied with that. That could be 3.5 years, but it could be just about anything. I mean, times. Well, what's the first time? What if the first time is 16 months? 16 months, 32 months, and 8 months. Why not? I'm just saying. No, but usually we think of the weeks as weeks of years. We talked about this, right? And the days representing years. Well, people have taken that and tried to use the 1,260-day things that's about to come up, right? The last couple verses. And Lord, I don't really want to take another study for this because it's not a lot to say about it. I'll probably go a little over then. But again, one of the last things that happens before Christ returns is the two witnesses are slain. The power of the holy people will be shattered. We will have a lot of the people who were rooting for us will be devastated because they'll think, just like when Christ was crucified, they'll think we've lost. They'll and quite naturally, it's going to be visceral. You're not going to be able to, if you survive to the end and watch that, you're not going to be able to just be like, I know it's okay. You'll be upset. Well, especially those people who are borderline, who are maybe, people listening to this study are more likely to be maybe among the dead. Anyways, so, you're not likely to be those hanging back at the back of the crowd, I assume, and not stepping forward to speak the truth. So, I don't think I have to worry about that. But it's not dishonorable. Just some of us have other things to do. So because how would we get there without them? Everyone has their part to play. Even a cup of water, they don't lose their reward. That's fine with me. I'll be thankful for the cup. So, for the words are closed up and sealed to the time of the end. Many shall be purified and made white and tried. So make sure you didn't miss anything. Right? The wise shall understand. The wicked should do wickedly. He that is unjust, let him be unjust still. He that is filthy, let him be filthy still. And he that is righteous, let him be righteous still. There's a certain inevitability to it all. Now, that doesn't mean we go out fatalistically, but it's true. The wicked will do wickedly. It's not that you assume that the wicked can't be converted. There will be I was a wicked person, not that wicked, not as wicked as some, but I was kind of wicked. I'm still rough around the edges. I'm not as some would have me. I'm not, for sure. Whatever. You know, takes all types. But the wicked, it's not to say that we're fatalistic, but what I'm saying is certain things are going to be. It's just what's going to be. Don't marvel that the wicked do wicked stuff. That's baked in the cake. That's supposed to happen. What's most important is what you do, how you react to it. The wicked are going to do wicked. And none of the wicked will understand. None of the truly wicked. Because that's the thing, is like, and the truly wicked are those who are reprobate and God has not chosen, and they are not in any ways destined for life. They're just not. God is kind to them in that he brought them into the world, and he would otherwise not have them, except they serve a purpose. And what are they complaining about? They get to do their fornication and all the stuff they pleasure in and thumb their nose at God. And when he throws them in the fire at the end, what? Like I said, especially since that fire is going to be pretty instantaneous, as far as I'm concerned. Poof. I don't believe in. You will not suffer a moment more than you deserve. So just take comfort in that, right? You think you're pretty good, you're pretty innocent. You will not suffer a moment more than you deserve. So, a lot of us feel like, it'll take the fire to burn some a little longer than others. That's probably true. Probably true. Some people, and here's another thing about that torment forever and ever. I mean, I understand. Like, look on some level, I could see torturing someone forever or for a long time. You know what I mean? There are certain people, when I think about them doing certain things, that I can graphically, because like I said, I'm a lover, not a fighter. I am a fighter, not a lover, really, tell you the truth. I'm both. I'm a lover and a fighter, but I say, like, I'm not a violent man, but that's not true. I am a violent man. I'm a violent man who eschews violence, who knows violence is not the way. Jesus taught us that we should not revenge ourselves. Violence is not the way. I do not believe in violence. But I have a violent spirit in my mind. I loved playing football. I loved hitting people. I loved knocking them on their bottoms. I loved it. And I like it. And I loved violence. And I understand it. I understand like when you get someone you feel they deserve it, and you get this, especially because I'm not a man who can feel any joy in hurting someone innocent. I have way too much conscience on that. But if I can justify it and think that this person's wicked and has done something exceedingly wicked, I can visualize all kinds of evil torment on that person. This is a confession of what I consider sin to myself. Because I feel this is violence in me welling up, and I don't think it's right. No, like I said, I don't believe in it. Like I said, I may have racist tendencies that I don't believe in because I'm a Christian. It's like I don't believe in that stuff. It's like I don't deny that I could be prejudiced at some point or something like that. Not intentionally, but, of course. I think it's so silly that people get all so worried about it. It's like, everybody's a little tiny bit racist. It's part of human nature. That's what they don't want to say. I'm not. That's the problem. It's like we have white people like, I'm not racist, and then other people say, oh, yes, you are. And it's like, come on, just relax. Everybody's a little tiny bit. And some people are like, I'm not. It's like, maybe not. Maybe some of us are 99.99999. But have you been tempted? That's what I would say. Have you been tempted to be racist? That's the question. Have you really been put in a position where you could be confronted with someone of a race different from you who's behaving really badly, and then ask yourself, is the fact that he's another race bothering you at all? At all? Or is it somehow playing into your anger? Is it getting into part of the thing? Because I'll tell you what, I think it's in some people's human nature, and I won't deny it's in mine, but I deny it as far as because of Christ. And I never felt particularly hostile to anybody, to tell you the truth, except those that do wickedly. And if I can justify that in my mind, yeah, I could see myself smashing someone's skull and perpetrating all kinds of extended torture on them. But at some point, it's like considering I'm just a man doing some fantasy thing. It's like, what about God? He has the power to make everything right and to balance it out. And I don't think anyone's temporary suffering is worth someone else suffering forever and ever. I mean, if you hurt somebody else, the worst I could say could be done to you that you should suffer the same thing. I mean, you know what I mean? And certainly in this world that they should be put out of the world and then sent to God for judgment. Let him determine how much they should suffer. Because I do believe that. God will determine how much they should suffer. And, Jesus himself indicated some shall be punished with many stripes and others with few. And he said more about that. But I'm just saying, just the idea of a differential. Most of the time when they talk about eternal torment, there is no differential. And ultimately, eternal torment at a pain of 9 is not much different than eternal torment at a pain of 10. Or even a pain of 1. Because if you have I don't know, there's a certain level of pain in the body which will cause someone to want to kill themselves. Because it becomes so difficult to exist. And it's tragic. And it's like, and at some point of pain in which the body breaks down, and at some point of pain in which you, I don't know, like the endorphins kick in. I'm a little, I know it's not just the body and all that. It's like it's body and soul in hell, but they're destroyed. And I take that as a real destruction. It's not just a metaphorical destruction. Like they're just, like when we see the way they destroy their lives here on earth. Like you walk down the streets of a major city, you may see lives destroyed, laying on the street with people addicted to these synthetic opioids and stuff that are really messing people up. That kind of destruction. That's not what it's talking about. God doesn't destroy people like that. I mean, what I'm saying? Like, that's not the work of God to destroy you in the sense of to make you a worm. You've made yourself a worm. So the worm does not die. That's not what that means. Okay. Let's look at the last 3 verses, because we'll finish this out in about 2 minutes here. From the time that the daily sacrifice shall be taken away, and the abomination that maketh desolate set up, there should be 1,290 days. So the daily sacrifice, there's one interesting thing I got to remember, is to separate those two. Because it seems like here they're very explicitly separated. The daily sacrifice taken away and the abomination of desolation being set up are separate events by 1,260 days. I really like to think of those things as coinciding. You know what I mean? Because, in fact, I think I talked about it like that, and I'd say, like, okay, well, definitely erase that from your mind. Erase that thought from your brain. What I said, because it's like, okay, yeah. Because they are connected in a way, but it's like, huh. Now, okay, wait, that's interesting, though. The daily sacrifice taken away. Wait, from the time the daily sacrifice shall be taken away. Wait a second. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I got it right. I just got it wrong a moment ago. It doesn't say it's between those 2 times. My gosh, I almost made a huge mistake. That would be a big mistake, to say it was between those times. No. The daily sacrifice is taken away, and the abomination that maketh desolate set up, that is at the same time. So, from that time to the end, that's what the between is. So from the time of the Antichrist and the actual abomination, I feel embarrassed for actually reading it like that for a second. I'm sorry. I actually got up early today to do this study, and I'm a little foggy. My coffee was not even, I didn't get to have any coffee today. And so I'm a little bit like, I do feel a little bit like, Paul, you maybe were a little ambitious because I'd missed sleep entirely the night before last. And so last night I got a night's sleep, and I got up, and I'm like, okay. And I made a colossal error there in reading. That's what happens when you have an open mind when you study, by the way. You don't feel set in your ways. I like to see that I just almost undid myself and was willing to undo myself as I misread it right now, and willing to look at my entire thing like say, wow, that's a tough one. But it's not. It's not that at all. Okay, so that's about 3.5 years. Book of Revelation says the same thing. About 3.5 years, 42 months, some serious thing like that, or something about that. But it says, blessed is he that waiteth and cometh to the 2,305 and 30. So that's what? 45 days later. Right? 45 days later. What about 45 days later? So I'm guessing those last 45 days are I don't know, the big stuff. And if you make it to the end of that, I don't know. I guess maybe at that, or you know what? I don't know. You want something? Here's one thing I would say. One thing Jesus said is that the Lord shortened the days. And maybe it's that 45 days. Remember, because here's the important thing. You're supposed to be waiting and coming to the 2,305. Oh, I'm sorry. No, not 2,000. My eyes are bad. Wow. To the 1,305 and 30 days. Blessed is he that waits and comes to that. Because that's when because if you don't wait to that, maybe something bad happens, right? And maybe that's the 10 days. Or maybe that's the 10 days. Maybe it's shortened to 10 days. Maybe that's what he means by he has shortened the days. Those days by which, where was the critical waiting period, where, or something, where it's like Christ hasn't come yet, or maybe it's, I don't know what, but that may be the shortened period through which, if he had not shortened the days, even the elect would be deceived, meaning it would be maybe he decided then those 45 days would be too much for us. And that who would be left at the end of the 45 days? Nobody. All would have bowed their knees to Satan, I guess, or something. Or not. I don't know. I certainly never think I would, but again, I think it's not in my power so much. It's like because our strength lies in Christ. And I ultimately know it's like the only reason I do anything is because I believe in him. And if I lost that, I'd bow to anything that was supernatural. I don't know. It's like, well, I guess this is God. If I lost my faith in Christ and I lost my grip on who he is. It's important to know who he is. But go thy way till the end be, for thou shalt rest, and shalt stand in thy light at the end of days. And thy lot, then, go thy way, you will rest. You're going to be dead. It's a restful thing being dead. It's not an anxious thing. You're not anxiously in heaven watching events, watching your loved ones, watching your wife remarry, You want to do that? It's like watching. Watching. I mean, it's like it really is not the way it goes. And as far as I'm concerned, I believe in the Old Testament, the way it says here, it's very clear. But thou shalt go thy way to the end. I believe the New Testament too, but I know there's some passages that are a little bit make it seem otherwise, but not really many, to tell you the truth. It's mostly just Lazarus and the rich man, and then some stuff of the vision in heaven in the book of Revelation. But that's all very visionary and questionable as far as I'm concerned. Like, souls under the altar screaming their brains out for vengeance is not exactly what I thought of as heaven. I thought there were pastries involved. Like an unending pastry buffet, right? I can eat pastries forever and never get fed. That's what they say. That's what he said, anyways. Yeah, that's not true. Anyways, thou shalt rest, stand in thy lot at the end. What is thy lot? Well, with the people of Israel, and what he has accomplished, the things he has done. We all have to stand in our lot. What is our lot? What is your portion? What have you to receive of God for your service? And God promises to reward every man according to his works shall be. And that includes us of faith, but faith is the keystone of all our works. I mean, it's like aren't saved by works. I don't want to have to go into it. Everyone knows I preach the gospel. I don't say you're saved by works, but we also know that Christians work, and we build our works on our faith, not our faith on our works, I think that's the right way to say it, right? And you can show your faith. I can show my faith by my works, but I don't create my faith by my works. My works are created by my faith. You know what I mean? And they come forth from my faith. Faith is primal and it is internal, because otherwise Christ couldn't have said to the thief on the cross, "This day you will be with me in paradise." He was, the only thing he could do was have faith at that point, and that is work enough when nothing else can be done, and that is the only work that really is, and it's not really work because faith itself is a gift. It's like one believes and one does not believe. It's something we don't, it's a blessing. Blessed are your eyes, Simon Bar Jonah, for you have seen these things. Anyways, thanks for joining me. We've completed the book of Daniel. I'm not sure what we're going to pick up on Monday, but we'll pick up on something. And anyone who wants to can leave a suggestion. I was thinking Minor Prophet, or I don't know, something. Anyways, until then, thanks for joining me. Look forward to being back again next week. The testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy. I don't know if I'm going to keep that up. What's the name of His commandments, that they may have a right to the tree of life. And they enter through the gates into the city, going out and